All right, let's talk about DoorDash. Today, we're going to peek under the hood of one of the most recognizable apps out there. We're going to deconstruct their Dasher app to figure out the architectural secrets that let a system handle just insane nonstop growth. Let's get right into it. So first, let's just get a sense of the scale we're dealing with. For more than 6 years, DoorDash hasn't just been growing, it's been multiplying. We are talking about doubling or tripling in size every single year. That kind of pressure is just an unbelievable amount of stress to put on any tech platform. So this brings us to the big question, right? How in the world do you build an application that doesn't just survive that kind of pressure, but actually thrives in it? This was the absolute core challenge for DoorDash's entire engineering team. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the problem that this kind of hypergrowth creates. Then, we'll dig into the guiding principles DoorDash came up with to solve it. From there, we'll see how those ideas affected their choice of tools, dive deep into their 3-layer architectural blueprint, and finally, wrap up with the single most important lesson that ties this whole thing together. Okay, part 1, the problem. Like a lot of startups, DoorDash had what you might call a scrappy beginning. The main goal was just ship features, get them out the door as fast as humanly possible to win the market. I mean, the survival of the whole company depended on that speed. But that kind of speed, it always comes with a price tag. And that price has a name, tech debt. You can kind of think of it as the villain of our story today. It's all the extra work you create for your future self by taking shortcuts right now. And over time, that debt just piles up and up. And if you don't deal with it, your whole system can just grind to a halt. This is exactly what DoorDash had to face head on. Which brings us to section 2. To fight back against tech debt and really prepare for the future, the team didn't just jump in and start writing code. Nope. They started by creating a clear philosophy, a set of guiding principles for how they would build things from now on. And these are their 3 core principles. First, KISS. Keep it super simple. This makes it way easier for new engineers to get up to speed. Second, don't reinvent the wheel. Use solutions that already exist for problems that have already been solved. And third, and this one is absolutely crucial, be trendless. So what does be trendless actually mean in practice? Well, it's a commitment to building a system where any single piece, any library, any tool can be pulled out and replaced without the entire structure collapsing. It's all about designing for change right from the very beginning. Okay, section 3. Let's see how this whole philosophy actually plays out in the real world when it's time to choose things like programming languages and all those third-party libraries. When it comes to language, you can literally see their past and their future in one chart. About a third of the app is still written in legacy Java, but the team has made a very clear move to Kotlin. And since Google officially endorsed it, 100% of all new code is written in Kotlin because they can take advantage of all its modern features and safety nets. And this is a perfect example of that don't reinvent the wheel principle in action. They use these powerful, industry-standard open source tools, things like Dagger to manage how all the different parts of the app connect to each other, and Retrofit to handle talking with their servers. The key thing here isn't just that these are stable tools, it's that the whole architecture is designed so that any one of them could be swapped out if something better comes along. Okay, now for the main event, the architectural blueprint itself. This is really the heart of how the Dasher app is put together to be so resilient and so scalable. At a really high level, they use what's called an N-tier clean pattern. Now, don't worry about the jargon. All this really means is that the app is built with really strict boundaries. Different parts of the app are kept totally separate. Data only flows in one direction, and components can't just reach in and mess with each other. It's all about control and, separation. And this whole pattern is built on 3 core layers. You've got the UI layer, which is everything you see, the domain layer, which is basically the brains of the operation, and the data layer, which is the memory. So let's break each one of these down. First up is the UI layer. This is everything a Dasher actually sees and touches on your screen. And following that KISS principle, the goal here is to keep this layer as simple and, dumb as possible. It's responsible for showing stuff and capturing what a user does, but that's about it. To manage all the complexity of the UI, they've standardized on Google's recommended MVVM pattern for all their new features. The reason's pretty simple. It is excellent at handling all the complex state changes that happen in a mobile app. Like what happens when you rotate your screen or switch to another app, and it keeps that UI layer cleanly separated from all the business logic. Now we get to layer 2, the domain layer. So if the UI is the face, the domain is without a doubt the brain. This is where all the core business logic lives. All the rules, all the calculations, like figuring out a delivery route or processing a new order, it all happens here, totally isolated from how things look on the screen. So let's look at how they keep this brain organized. They use these components they call managers to handle specific business rules, like managing a dash. To stop these managers from becoming this tangled spaghetti code mess, they use a system called Reflex that lets them talk to each other without being directly tied together. And finally, they use a facade, which is basically like a fake front that lets them easily swap in test data, which makes the app way easier to test and debug. It's just a very clean, very organized approach. And finally, we get to the foundation, the data layer. This is the app's single source of truth. It is responsible for literally everything related to data, making network calls to the DoorDash servers and caching that info locally on the device using tools like Room. It provides the data, but it doesn't care what it means. That's the domain layer's job. And that brings us to our final, and you could argue, the most important section of them all. After all this planning and all this structure, what is the key lesson from DoorDash's entire journey? It's this simple idea right here. This quote says it all. If we find something isn't working well, we change it. The architecture is not some sacred text set in stone. In a hypergrowth world, the plan is going to change. The team gets that. The ability to adapt is so much more important than any blueprint they started with. So, what are the big lessons we can take away here? First, start with simple, timeless principles, not whatever's trendy this week. Second, separate your app into distinct layers so that any single piece can be replaced. Third, lean on stable, well-understood patterns. And finally, and this really is the big one, build from day one with the absolute expectation that everything you've built will eventually need to change. And that leaves us with one final question to think about for our own projects. Are you building something that's meant to last forever, totally rigid and unchanging? Or are you building something that's designed from the ground up to evolve? Thanks for watching.